everyone and welcome. It is Karen here with you today, and today I am sharing with you an image that I have used from the August Challenge Shine set. There's actually two. They are $1.50 or free with any purchase at Michelle Grant Designs. So I'm starting off in my Large Dilutions journal, and I have some wallpapers here from the botanical set, which is designed by Fee. So I'm just getting that prepared, ripping off some of the edges there and deciding on whether I actually need 2 sheets or just one, and I think I only need 1 and a bit. Anyway, so I'm deciding that I'm going to put those there, and I'm going to start off by gluing them down with a Matisse liquid gel medium. I'm using a liquid one because it's a little bit easier to use with tissue, because the tissue is so fine. By having the runnier medium allows you to glue down easier. So now that I've got that side done, I'm just going to get my girl prepared. So I've picked the lighter of the 2 images, so you actually get 2 images for August because we couldn't decide which one we liked better. We liked them both, so you get this light one and then there's a darker version as well. So I'm just doing the same thing by gluing her into my book with my runny gel medium. Again, I have printed her out onto tissue paper, so the runnier the medium, the easier it is to actually glue down the tissue. So I'm just using a little bit more tissue to add to the top here and to fill in some of my gaps. Deciding if I'm going to fill up that gap there or not. Oh dear. So yeah, just putting up some of the little bits, and I did manage to rip it just a tiny little bit in a couple of areas, but not too bad. So I'm pretty happy with how it worked out. It has got a few crinkles in it, but you expect that with tissue and the gel medium that you are going to get some crinkles. So it's not ever going to be perfect. I just class those as some extra texture into my book. So now that I've got all my collage dry, I'm going to start by adding in a little bit of watercolour, and I'm using my Prima watercolours here, and I'm trying to kind of match in the colours that are in Fee's hydrangea wallpaper here from the botanical set with the watercolours out of my palette. So I've got some blues and a couple of greens, and there's actually a really pale mauve as well that I've mixed in with the blue to help, to help it match in with the colours. So I think I did a pretty good job there. So I'm just trying to where the edge of the rice paper is to help blend that out a little bit with the watercolour. So once that's completely dry, I'm going to spray that with a workable fixative. It's actually a matte varnish, satin varnish, because I actually wanted to add a layer of clear gesso over the top, and as you can see, I've absolutely flooded it. So I definitely did not need to use that much clear gesso. Oh dear. Just as well, the bottle has a lid on it that you can actually take off and put the excess back into the jar, because oh my god, you don't ever need to use that much. Anyway, once it's dry, as you can see, it dries clear. So now I can use my modelling paste or texture paste, and that is actually today's Monday Mojo, is to use your texture paste. So I've got one of my favourite new stencils here from the Crafters Workshop, and I'm using some fluffy light paste from Pen Art, I think it is, and I'm just going to add a few leaves at the top there with that lovely stencil. And the important thing to remember is when you're using modelling paste or texture paste with your stencils is to clean them afterwards, because if it dries, it's probably not going to come off. Now the other stencil that I've got here is from Stamperia. So again, I'm just using a little bit of the stencil, and then just wiping up some of the excess. Now I can wipe that excess off and some of those smudges because I have put that layer of gesso on underneath. Now I've left that to dry overnight. 2 reasons: because it takes a little while to dry, and the other reason was because my camera ran out of battery. Okay, so now it's the next day and I've got out some dilution sprays and I'm going to paint over my modelling paste. Now, as you can see, the dilution sprays are really bright and I really don't want my modelling paste to be quite that bright. So I'm actually got a baby wipe there and I'm wiping it back. So I'm leaving it on there for a little while to stain and then I'm going to wipe it back off. The other thing I'm doing is using some of my sprays to add some splatter into the background there as well. So of course where it was wet before, those splats have expanded and gone nuts. So I'm just going to wipe those up too in a little while. The next thing I'm going to do is a little bit of stamping. So I've used a little Prima script stamp and the one that I've got there in my hand is a little flower from Altenew. The other thing I'm going to grab out is my Intense pencils so that I can add a little bit of detail into her face. So I'm only going to do her eyes and her lips and the rest of her I'm going to leave as is. So yeah, that's what I'm doing there. So I'm just putting a tiny little dot of colour in the eyes and on the lips and then using my paintbrush to spread that colour around because I really didn't want it to be too bright, but I did want it to have a little bit of colour. So I'm going to get those dry and the rest of that spray dry before I start mopping up some of the excess bits that I have up the top there because it was really, really bright. So I'm just wiping it back just to tone it down and to bring some of the whiteness back in. Now I'm adding a little bit of black rollerball pen into her eyes just to help add some more definition to them and the little catch lights there as well with the white uniball pen. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is add in a little bit of gold embossing and I've got this stamp here that I got from Yates. I think it might have been designed by Michelle. It's a beautiful leafy stamp and I've got my tub of Wow embossing powder and I'm just, putting the stamps on in some random places just roughly and sprinkling on my embossing powder and I'm using a big brush there to help wipe away some of the excess because there's always excess embossing powder where you don't want it to be. So before I heat set it, which is what I'm doing now, I just brushed it off. So you can see there how the embossing powder works with the heat gun. You just heat it up and it starts to melt and then it changes colour. Also, I decided to add a little bit more to the top there, so brushing off the excess and I'll heat that up. There we go. So that looks really good. So the other thing I noticed was that some of my embossing powder stuck to some of my flowers and my mandala stamp that I used as well. And that's because of the ink that I used, which was a Versa Claire. A Versa Claire in black. That's what it was. So I just glued on my quote and what does the quote say? I can't quite remember. No matter how chaotic it is, wildflowers will still spring up in the middle of nowhere. That's what it is. That's what it is. So there we go. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I've put on some glitter and flake glue onto my butterflies there and I've got out some gilding flakes here and I'm just going to sprinkle that on. I did try to speed up the process with my heat gun so that I could get the glue tacky before I stuck on the flakes, but didn't really work out very well. I should have left it a bit longer than what I did. But anyway, I really quite liked the effect of just a little bit of sparkle on those butterflies. So that's my page. I hope I have inspired you guys. I hope that you will go and check out the new August images. We would love to see your entries into our challenge and make sure that you share your work with us. And until next time, see you later, but please like and subscribe as well. Okay, bye-bye.